past decade's been wild. I'm sure it comes with wanting to be more articulate, but I've been saying a lot of really positive things about a lot of games. People who follow me on Twitter can attest to that. Following the wavelength of most people around this time, I've compiled a list of games I believe were the best this past decade. But this list in question isn't to pit games against each other. One, I don't feel like making a ranked list. They're hard to make, especially with how many games are on this list. And two, I know for a fact that a week later, there's going to be a certain game at a certain spot, I'm going to regret putting it in that certain spot, and then I'm going to end up hating this video. I'm not having that. The only exception to this rule is the last game on this list. Everything else, consider them equals in their own right. And I'm going to be up and honest, I couldn't get footage for all of these games. I had to grab some trailers off of YouTube, which of course is going to be a little jarring in quality. So the plan here is to have all the games with trailer footage put at the beginning of the list. And with this list being mostly unranked, that really helps. And I really shouldn't have to say this, but keep in mind that this list represents what I have come to enjoy the most from this decade. I'm not here to speak on your behalf. I only say this because there are so many people where they look at a list and they're like, well, what about X game? Nobody's talking about you, man. I know that sounds kind of messed up. Now it's different if it's like, IGN or something like that, where it's a bunch of people, because it's like several people, so it doesn't hurt to throw in a bunch of, well, what about this, what about that, but, when it's one dude, I don't owe you nothing. Now, of course, this isn't to be confused with people who want to offer their own list, or even agree or disagree with list placements. I'm fine with basic discussion. I'm talking about people who try to correct a list. People like that are not worth a thought. Oh, and another thing, there's a decent amount of shooters in this list. Nothing dominating, but there's a decent amount of them. We still got RPGs and platformers, so don't worry. Each game is getting about 2 or less minutes to be talked about, because this video is already going to be pretty long. And you guys know me, I could talk about stuff for a very long time, and I'm not trying to waste your time. We've got a lot to talk about here. The only exception is the last game, which would get a little more time, obviously. But other than that, everything should be fairly quick. Oh, also, there aren't any Final Fantasy games on this list. I'd rather have a separate list for that. But let's quit wasting time. Welcome to the personal best of the decade from 2009 to 2019. So you'd think that with the 3DS being as old as it is, that eventually there would come another shooter that would pass up Kid Icarus Uprising as the best shooter on the platform, but surprisingly, that didn't really seem to happen. Kid Icarus Uprising still remains king on that platform, and there's a good reason for that. The game's combat is fantastic. It's a bunch of dodging, running around, shooting, trying to think ahead of the enemy. It feels so good to play the game. The fusion system is very addicting because you can get loot from the main quest or even from the multiplayer and combine it together to make a new weapon, and then you can think about what kind of direction you want to go in, what's your play style. There's so many stats to pick from. It's such a blast to play. And getting back to that multiplayer I just mentioned, it is so good. Of course, now we're past the prime of it, but back in its heyday, man, it was really hype. Especially when you roll it in with a really good weapon and you could whoop everybody with it. But I did like how the game did balance that out by making a bigger point boundary in your head, so you were really good, but people could kill you and get more points off of you. So that was the penalty. You were just worth a lot of points. Really dug that. And honestly, for Kid Icarus Uprising, coming out pretty much just a year after the 3DS's launch, and being this good and still remaining the best shooter on the platform, that is really impressive. If only I could find where my lost freaking cartridges. I miss that game so much. Little Big Planet 2 is one of the strongest flexes from my childhood. I really want to put Little Big Planet 1 on here as well, but I can't because that game came out in 2008, this is from 2009 to 2019, so I'm really sad about that. But still, Little Big Planet 2 is an awesome sequel to an already amazing game. Now, I did have some gripes here and there about Little Big Planet 2's campaign, but that didn't matter. It was still a really good game. And on top of that, the community support for Little Big Planet 2 was so good, man. For those of you out of the loop, Little Planet 1, 2, and even 3 offered players tools to make their own levels. It was basically a modding community, and man was it good. Unfortunately, with Little Big Planet 2 being past its prime, you're not really going to get much traffic on it anymore, but back in its day, man, it was bumping, man. The game's community support was so good. I only wish I could say the same thing about Little Big Planet 3, because Little Big Planet 3 is awful. It is so bad. In a nutshell, bad performance, really mediocre levels. The game was so laggy and so buggy and so glitchy that so many community members just jumped off the train. And as sad as it is, it was the right thing to do because that game is awful, man. Broforce surprised me. It looked like a really good game, but you know, I thought it was gonna be like a fun little time waster. Kinda dumb, kinda silly, and well, no, it is kinda dumb. It's kinda silly. But it's also a really, really good game. The game comes with a variety of characters you can play as, each with their own unique abilities. Generally, they can just utterly destroy everything in their path, although you can be killed just about as easily, so you gotta be careful. It's still a pretty difficult game. But the stuff you can do, the open-ended environment, how you can blow up walls, blow up floors, blow up buildings, pretty much blow everything to smithereens, it's a fantastic game. My only real gripe with the game is the fact that it's so RNG heavy because you just can't go ahead and pick a character that you really like. You have to hope that you get a good roll and you get the character that you want to play as. That is so annoying. I wish you could turn that off, but other than that, that game is fantastic. The game definitely isn't for everyone because it can punish you for looking away for just one moment. I understand that. I really, really do. But for me, I took it as a challenge, and I really, really enjoyed the game. Most of his bosses kind of suck, though, which is unfortunate. Never really been much of a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. My brother's more of it than I am, to be completely honest. But I enjoy them, they're fun. I'm really bad at them, but they're pretty good. And Generations was pretty remarkable. It was a really solid game. Yeah, sure, you kind of held down Square quite a bit when you were playing as Modern Sonic, but forget it, man. A game's supposed to be fun first, difficult later, you know? And yeah, I was really, really bad at the classic Sonic levels, but that's a different story. Although, I was pretty decent at Sonic Generations on the 3DS, which is actually the version I've played more, and it's actually pretty good. It comes with its own zones. This isn't a crappy, downgraded port. It actually has its own content to offer. And yeah, 100%ed it. Had a really good time with it. And the music is so, so good. Even the 3DS soundtrack, it's so good, man. But you really can't expect any less from a Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack to begin with. Even the bad ones have a really good soundtrack. Except for Boom, I guess. The original Ocarina of Time. What a fantastic game that is. I have spent countless hours as a really little kid exploring Hyrule, doing quests, killing Ganon for the 300th time. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty biased towards that game. That game is a huge part of my childhood, and yeah, it's the first Zelda game I've ever played. But that game served as a definition of my childhood. But to be honest with you, that game has issues. Slow text, 20 FPS, and janky controls. Everything fixed in the 3D remake, Ocarina of Time 3D. Fast-moving text, 30 frames per second, controls that don't make you want to kill yourself. On top of having a Sheikah Stone that can show you tips and tricks on certain parts of the game that might be a little tricky for newcomers, and even giving players 2 extra equip slots, so that really tedious moments like having to open the menu and switch over the Iron Boots is really no longer an issue. A lot of the critical information has been put on the bottom screen to keep the top one clear, nice and clean. The aesthetic is amazing. It looks cartoonier than the original Ocarina of Time, but it's so appealing and the animation is so, so nice. And on top of all that, you get the Master Quest 3D, which is a revised version of the original Master Quest that comes with 2 times damage and a mirrored overworld. And yeah, maybe it's cheating that I'm putting a 2011 remake of a 1998 game on this list, but I do not care, man. Once again, Ocarina of Time, the original, served as a definition of my childhood. And Ocarina of Time 3D served as a definition of my preteen to teen years. Stay strong, Oot. Frankly, I've got to pick this game up some more, but every time I've played it, I've had a blast. Super Mario Odyssey, if you somehow haven't heard of it, is a Mario game that allows you to possess enemies and other characters, and it's a lot of fun. You were offered so many ways as to how you want to approach certain puzzles, certain platforming situations. Really, it's just your classic Mario goodness to me. And yeah, it's not my favorite Mario game, at least not as of this video. Weirdly enough, that belongs to Super Mario 64 DS, which, to be honest with you, I don't even know why I liked that game as much as I did. But setting that aside, Odyssey is still noteworthy though. It's a fantastic game. And if you haven't played it, please try it out. It's good. To be honest with you, Super Mario Galaxy 2 feels more like an expansion than an actual fully blown sequel, but it doesn't matter. It's still a really, really good game. Guess it helps that it was building a foundation off of a game that was already really good. The addition of Yoshi is really fun. I've always loved using Yoshi in any Mario game. He's just amazing. The new pilots are fun to mess around with and blasted around planets, messing with the strange gravity gimmick that the game had. It was fun to mess around with, but I never really fully understood it, but I still liked it. Game's just good. That's what I'm trying to say. The game is just good. I haven't played it in years, actually. But there's one thing I do know. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's just that classic Mario goodness. And, speaking of Mario... New Super Mario Bros. U. This is what we needed for the last two games. So this is how it goes right now. New Super Mario Bros., the original on the DS, phenomenal game. Really, really enjoyable platformer. New Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Wii, the game's okay. I mean, it's fun, but it ain't like that fun. New Super Mario Bros. 2, look, anything that isn't the DLC, I dare you to find actual gameplay in it. I dare you to. Basically, that game really sucks. But New Super Mario Bros. 2, but New Super Mario Bros. U. Really, really good game. Especially with the addition of a fifth player that you can use with the gamepad where you can tap on the screen to create platforms or even control the level in certain cases. This game is amazing. The platforming is good. It's got a good challenge going on for it. New Super Luigi U is also really good. It's an expansion of New Super Mario Bros. U. And it's just New Super Mario Bros. U, but on speed. And it's also very difficult, but it's a lot of fun. Me and my family 100%ed both the original and the expansion. Both are worth it. And for as much as I enjoy the original New Super Mario Bros., it's definitely my second favorite, but you just kicked it off, man. I'm so sorry, the original NSMB, but you was just so much fun. Some people really like to criticize the New Super Mario Bros. Series, and yeah, the series had two duds, and they kind of stick out, and they stain the series kind of hard, but the first and the last entry really took it out of the park. Hey, you tired of hearing about Mario yet? Yeah? Sorry about that, I guess, but we got another one. I mean, again, it's just Mario, man. Mario. But yeah, seriously though, Super Mario 3D Land is a very interesting take on the 2D Mario formula. Well, it takes the 2D formula and puts it in 3D. Now granted, Galaxy 1 and 2 technically already did that, but 3D Land's intent is to play more like the original games, but to throw it in a 3D environment, because the game is not based on health, it's based on power-ups. So yeah, you can shrink and you fall off the screen when you die, and the platforming is a little tighter, but it's a really solid game. Game also comes with the Star Worlds, which is awesome because it's remixed versions of the levels in the main game, and they're a lot of fun to play. I've 100%ed Super Mario 3D Land like 4 times. Don't regret it. That game is really good. And even though I'm pretty sure that Galaxy 1, 2, and of course Odyssey is better than Super Mario 3D Land, Super Mario 3D Land shares a similar status with Ocarina of Time 3D of defining my preteen to teen years. So yeah, kinda biased. Can't stop me. Okay, so finally getting out of Super Mario platformers, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. The best RPG on the Nintendo 3DS, without a doubt. I know I gave Kid Icarus Uprising a lot of praise earlier, but for Ultimate, just as an overall game, I enjoy much more than Kid Icarus Uprising. That is not to belittle Uprising at all. Uprising is still an amazing game, but for Ultimate, man, just such a good game. Game is pretty difficult too. Not as hard as older Monster Hunters as I've heard, but I mean, I don't care. It's still hard. In some sense, I enjoy it, alright? Go away. But yeah, seriously, game's really fun. Action RPG about killing monsters, collecting their parts, building better gear so you can kill bigger and badder monsters. Game also has a very fun infinite loop cycle, where even if you complete all of the quests, you can do guild quests, which are randomly generated quests that you get from doing expeditions. So you could keep going further and further into the game and getting random loot drops. So even if you get everything in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, you are still technically not done with it, because there's random weapons you can get and there's random armor you can get. So just when you think the game has run out of steam, it just gets better. I love 4 Ultimate with all my heart, man. It's such a fantastic JRPG. Tomodachi Life is weird. I ain't gonna lie to you, it's a really weird game. But it's also very, very funny and a pretty enjoyable game, although its gameplay loop can get either good or bad depending on, I don't really know, to be honest. The gameplay loop is similar to other life sims. You focus on a group of people, you try to make their lives better. You give them stuff to make them happy, they get into relationships break off, people get sad, you gotta make them happy, people get angry, you gotta cool them down. Maybe they want to go for a walk, maybe they want to walk their pet, maybe they want to go skateboarding, golfing, whatever it may be. It's just an enjoyable life sim game. But yeah, the gameplay loop, the issue about that is that sometimes your Miis can get really unresponsive and won't have any issues to solve, won't get into a relationship, won't even talk to anybody, and they just kind of sit there. And other times you can get Miis that you can create around that same time, and dude, they can't stop talking to everybody. They're like one of the most popular people in the town. It is such a weird issue. This usually ends up happening when you have most of your apartment rooms filled up. It's such an annoying issue and really a big stain on what is otherwise a very good game. Obviously, with it being on this list, it's still a fantastic title, and I still really enjoy playing it from time to time, but it does have its issues. I hope, I pray that one day we get a sequel to this game. If you're like me and you were playing through Tomodachi Life and you were like, some of these features would be really nice in a traditional RPG, Miitopia is there for you. The game's biggest attraction is pretty much the life sim stuff from Tomodachi Life integrated into an RPG experience. You're gonna have party members get mad at each other, get sad with each other, grow closer together, get frustrated with each other, and even try to mess over each other during battle. But even the bad blood between party members can work to your advantage. I think it really helps carry this game a long way. Because frankly, if you have played this game like I have, you could tell that it is most definitely on a tight budget, and likely on a tight time constraint as well. For one, the level design of this game is borderline non-existent. It's hardly there. It's just, alright, go to area, go from A to B, and just watch it happen. And then occasional enemy encounters show up. On top of that, you can only control one of your party members, not all four of them, so you don't interact with the game that much. And the game is so easy that you can leave your main character on auto battle and nothing changes at all. They're just doing what you're already thinking of doing at that time. It feels like a watered down Final Fantasy III if I'm being completely honest. But the life sim aspect of it really makes it enjoyable. It really does. It adds a whole lot of personality to the game. I can't really say I've played another game like it. So it's got really high highs, but it's also got some pretty prominent lows. But still, in the simplest nutshell, this is what I wanted. So you know what? I'll take it. Super Smash Bros. 4, known as Trash 4 to some Melee players, is a game I've not given enough credit. I really regret making that Why Rob Kinda Gave Up on Smash Bros. Video because I've come to realize just how ungrateful I was towards that game. When Smash Ultimate came by and changed some of the things I liked about Smash 4, dude, I kinda freaked out. I was not happy about it, and then I realized, like, wow, Smash 4 was actually pretty dang good. Especially with its custom system, that was, to this date, the best non-subspace emissary thing that Smash Bros. Has done. Because you could tweak and rebalance characters to your weird, morbid curiosity. And it was so interesting. Do you want a lightning fast Ganondorf or do you want a super slow Sonic the Hedgehog? It was strange, but it was fun. And then you could sometimes get special stat attributes that came with their own sacrifices. You were playing this active game of rock, paper, scissors against yourself. And what made it even more interesting is that when you play custom on random, the bots would get random stats. So it was almost like you were fighting a brand new opponent every single time, which made the gameplay loop so addicting. I'm gonna be honest with you, when I play Smash Ultimate, there's a lot I gotta tweak in that game just to make it enjoyable to me. I don't care for that game's competitive nature. Like, vanilla Smash Ultimate in its current state is something I really don't enjoy playing. I liked it at first because, you know, it was new, recency effect, but after a while it just wore me out, and I'm like, wow, this is kinda getting on my nerves. So now I play that game with spirits, and just level them up so I can play with an RPG element. Plus, Ultimate's theme sucks. I will never change my mind on that. Ultimate's theme sucks. Let me just come straight up and say that I 100% understand why people don't like Death Stranding. In a nutshell, the game's a delivery simulator. Now, there's more to it than just going from point A to point B. There's a lot of obstacles that block you from destination to destination. Which, if you don't really like the idea of what's basically a really big obstacle course, then yeah, you're gonna hate this game without a doubt. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel towards this game, because it was a very interesting concept, but I couldn't really say outright that it was going to be fun. and maybe it's because of the more RPG grindy mindset that I've adopted in the past few months, but I find Death Stranding to be very addicting. I don't know, it's just something about having something important to take to another location while being chased down by a bunch of bandits, a bunch of aliens, a bunch of other crazy stuff, while having to make sure you don't fall off the ledge and break your legs or something. The game's really good about making sure that you aren't just holding the stick in one direction and just shutting your eyes. You actually have to pay attention. And with all the tools at your disposal to get from place to place, there's just something charming about trying to figure out how to get to another place in the fastest and safest way possible. If you like the idea of what's basically a puzzle open world game, this one is for you. Hey, look at that. It's the super bad, worst Zelda game of all time video game on this list. But no, yeah, seriously guys. Skyward Sword, Summon of Ocarina of Time 3D, and Super Mario 3D Land, another definition of my pre-teen to teen years, man. I'm gonna be really honest with you. Sword combat in Zelda games is usually just not that good. There isn't much consequence for it, there usually isn't much thinking that's involved, it's mediocre. The exploration of Zelda games is awesome, but the sword combat is just kinda iffy. But Skyward Sword is the exception. That game's sword combat is so fun, man. I don't know what it is, it's still easy, but just knowing that you can't just swing any kind of way and just get your way with the fight, and having to think before swinging. And then the parrying, which feels weirdly good in Skyward Sword. I don't know, man. Game had really good combat, on top of a narrative that was actually very enjoyable, had very humorous characters. The writing wasn't super deep or anything, you'll definitely find more philosophical things in like Metal Gear Solid or Death Stranding. But Skyward Sword, for a Zelda game, had a pretty good narrative. I've beaten Skyward Sword like, what, 4 or 5 times? So it isn't my most beaten Zelda game, but it's still a game I very much enjoyed. Family used to watch me play it too, they loved it to death as well. I love Skyward Sword so much. The items are really cool as well, but the sword combat is what really stood out to me. Just wish the exploration was better, because honestly, it's kind of bad in Skyward Sword. But it has really high highs, and that's what matters. Cuphead is ridiculously good eye candy to me. The amount of research that went into the animation and the aesthetic is staggering. What really helps is the fact that, as a little kid, me and my siblings used to watch a lot of old VHSs and DVD collections of old cartoons at our grandparents' house. I'm talking Popeye, Betty Boop, Felix the Cat, Molly Moo Cow, Woody Woodpecker, things of that nature. So seeing Cuphead all these years later almost brings a tear to my eye. On top of that, the game's crazy hard, but also has a really addicting gameplay loop, especially with a friend. And it's so satisfying to finally beat that boss and move on to the next level or the next boss. The game will kick your butt time after time. But if you're like me who loves really hard games, on top of loving old Fleischer rubber hose cartoons, Cuphead is definitely worth it. Call of Duty Black Ops gameplay loop is decent. It's definitely not the best first-person shooter I've played in terms of raw gameplay, but the game's narrative, man, it's so gripping. I can't think of another first-person shooter that had me on the edge of my seat while I was playing it. I'm sure there are other Call of Duty games that do the same thing, but I'm not that big of a Call of Duty fan, to be honest. I'm more of a Black Ops fan. But that being said, I want to play more Call of Duty games to be caught up, because I heard they are really, really good, and this is just one of many good stories that Call of Duty has told. I know it's kind of weird to go from talking about gameplay and aesthetic and other features to just talking about just story, but that's really where it's at for Black Ops for me. And again, the gameplay is good, it's enjoyable, but this game also does a really good job of being a part-time movie. Fantastic. I have no idea why I haven't beaten Shovel Knight more than once. And I haven't even played the expansions. I'm not sure what I'm doing with my life. If you have an itch for a Mega Man gameplay loop, Shovel Knight's pretty good about scratching that, because it plays off of that formula of going to a level, defeating that boss there, and using their ability to exploit or explore other levels in different ways. On top of that, the game has upgrades and power-ups you can purchase that are worth getting so you can understand what your kind of playstyle is, and the difficult nature of Shovel Knight really aids in justifying the choices you go with. That and, well, the game's really, really pretty. Really pretty. Nicely animated. It's a really funny game. And Jake Kaufman is just... it's a good soundtrack, man. Please, do not be an idiot like me. Play Shovel Knight more than once. I'm not really sure what I expected out of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, other than an 80s throwback, but I mean whatever it was, I was pleased. The game's got a really addicting gameplay loop. Other than the main quest, you're running around from outpost to outpost, taking out enemies and getting upgrades that make your weapons go from being honestly kinda crappy to death machines, like getting semi-automatic, quad-barreled, flaming shotguns, or turning your sniper rifle into an explosive sniper rifle that's semi-automatic. It's stupid, man, but it's so good. I wish there were just more enemies in the game, though. There's just really 3 types. You got your standard soldier grunt guy, your minigun guy, you got guy in the helicopter. And yeah, you got enemies like, you know, like Snow Tiger, but like, I'm talking about enemies here. I wish the game was longer than like just 9 hours, because Blood Dragon is good. We need more stuff like this. I have not played a normal Far Cry game at all. I've only played this spin-off of Far Cry 3. But that game, I want more of that. More stuff like bunny hopping at the speed of light and flicking shotgun shells into my gun. Like that, it's stupid, but it's stupid the right way. Spark the Electric Jester is another case of, why haven't I beaten this game more than once? It's super good. I'm an idiot. Spark combines 2 gameplay elements I really enjoy: Sonic the Hedgehog's fast nature and the ability system from Kirby games. And it sounds disastrous, but it's surprisingly good. Game's like 7 hours for a first timer, and I can say throughout that 7 hours, it's a pretty solid game. There are some moments that are way too difficult in my opinion. Especially if you're playing Spark the Electric Jester or you're trying to play the game on a harder difficulty, it's a little too crushing for me. But other than that, the game's it's Sonic cross Kirby really. Sounds bad, but they pull it off pretty good. You gotta check it out. I'm afraid to know how many hours I sank into Borderlands 2. For those looking from the outside in, Borderlands may seem like a simple looter shooter, but when you realize that there are so many shields, class mods, weapons, class abilities, all of those things that can be intertwined, and you have all these special abilities that you're like, oh wait a minute, I can do this, or I can pull off that, or maybe I wonder if I equip this ability with this shield, with this weapon, that I can get this result. Borderlands 2 is filled with all these weird, intricate, experimental possibilities. And that's what makes it worth playing, and that's why me and my dad have played it so much. My dad can attest to this. We have spent entire days playing Borderlands 2. He has a free day, I have a free day. We spend like the entire day playing it. It's an utterly fantastic game. I would love to put Borderlands 3 on this list. However, I have not beaten Borderlands 3 yet, and the thing about Borderlands games is that there's a wide spectrum to the gameplay. And I think even just playing Borderlands 3 one time, just playing through it and beating the campaign one time is not enough for me to make a verdict on it. Because, again, the possibilities with Borderlands games can be almost endless at times. And then when you just think you're running out of things to do, switch over to another class and do it all over again. Borderlands 2 is amazing, and I really wish I could put 3 on there, but I just don't think I have enough time left in the year to make a verdict on it. Although I really enjoy 3, I can tell you that much. Ion Fury is a game that's stuck in the past, and is not afraid to show that. It feels like a compromise between Shadow Warrior and Blood, taking the absolute best from both. And that alone wouldn't really make Ion Fury stand out that much, but Ion Fury has a little bit of a twist to it. Anticipation. Unlike most old school first-person shooters where you have maybe just that one gun that reloads, everything in Ion Fury has to be reloaded. So that means this isn't like Doom or Duke Nukem 3D, where you can pretty much hold down the mouse one button the entire time. Eventually you're going to run out of ammo and you have to reload, so you have to run out, reload your gun, and get back into the fight. What comes with this is this very rhythmic gameplay, where you're running around and also ducking in and out of cover to get as many shots off as you can without dying. On the second hardest difficulty, this game is actually pretty hard. So I'd probably stick a little close to that quick save button, because you're probably going to be making a lot of mistakes. Really my biggest gripe with the game is the fact that the last 3 episodes feel pretty rushed. You don't really get any new content, no new enemies, you don't get any new bosses, even the final boss sucks. But that's okay, because even if the game is lacking originality in its last 3 episodes, it's still good content it's throwing at you, and the level design does not dwindle whatsoever. Pick this game up. I I was talking with a classmate about this game, and they had mentioned that Stardew Valley has a weird hook to it, that even if you're not into farming games, that you might find yourself hooked on it and you almost don't even know why. And yet, surely enough, that happened to me. Because I'm not much of a farming simulator guy, but yet, here I am playing Stardew Valley and it's a whole lot of fun. With me not being much of a farming simulator guy, I hardly played any Harvest Moon back in the day. I can't be that articulate about this, but the general loop of getting to know people, developing relationships with them, along with farming crops, selling them for good money, hitting up the mines, mining it up, getting some ore, smelting that ore, I really don't even know how to put it, but I can say without a doubt that I'm having a lot of fun playing it so far. Please, if you're like me and you don't really play farming sims and you're like, this game looks dull, I said the same thing too, until I played it. Although the story and the gameplay are really good, what really stood out to me in Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception is its co-op aspect. It ain't Borderlands 2 levels of wasting your life away, but Uncharted 3 got a lot of attention by me and my dad. The co-op mode has so many ways you can approach combat scenarios, with all these hidden guns, all these hidden routes, all of these things you can do to approach enemies and work towards simply killing everybody and achieving basic objectives. It's fun. It can get a little tiring at times, yeah, especially when you get killed by that same enemy or the choker, or as me and my dad call him, asthma guy, keeps grabbing you and breaking your neck and you're just like, oh, man, this game. Yeah, it's annoying, but the co-op for what it is so addicting and it's so fun, especially when you consider the fact that the better you do, the more cash you start getting, and then you can spend that cash on upgrading weapons and getting perks, and then with those perks, you can satisfy special tasks so you can upgrade them to make them even better. I mean, this game is just, again, I love the campaign, but the co-op, man, the co-op, it's so good. When our PlayStation 3 lost all of its data and we had to start the co-op over again to get everything, I didn't even care, because Uncharted 3's progression and its wild, crazy nature, along with all the enemies and all the approaches you can make to it, it's just worth it. With Uncharted 4, A Thief's End not having any split screen for its multiplayer, I haven't even bothered with the multiplayer at all. You'd think I'd look down on this game, but the gameplay loop of Uncharted 4 is so good. One of the things that annoyed me the most about the first 3 Uncharted games is how if you're trying to sneak around and not be seen, the enemies could catch a glimpse of your dandruff from 3 miles away and they would know right at that very moment that it was you. And they all knew exactly where you were going. I could not stand that about the first 3 games. Love all 3 of them, but ooh. Uncharted 4 made it more realistic to where enemies actually have to process what they're looking at before they can decide whether or not you're a threat to them. And this really helps too, so if you're trying to get a jump on an enemy, get a weapon beforehand or something, you can do that without fear of being immediately ruined. On top of the new addition of getting the grappling hook, which allows you to swing around enemies, shoot at them, get to new vantage points, guns just feeling better to shoot, the recoil which shows where your bullets are bouncing off to so that you can correct more accurately. It's just the little stuff, man. Uncharted 4 is really good. Again, haven't messed with the multiplayer at all, but Uncharted 4 stood out to me as a phenomenal PlayStation 4 game. And yeah, there's a little bit too much jumping around and climbing in it. To be honest, there kind of is. But still, I don't care. The gameplay is just solid. When it gets good, it gets good. I had to give Dusk a second chance to really appreciate it for what it was. The first time I tried Dusk, I really didn't care for it. It felt like the enemies were way too strong and your guns weren't hitting hard enough. But I decided, you know, with me being an open-minded individual, that maybe I should give it another shot. Let's start from the top again. And surely enough, I had a blast playing the game. I'm not sure what I even did wrong the first time playing this, but playing Dusk again, I don't regret it. The game's a throwback to old school 90s FPS games, and you can obviously tell if you've seen anything from that era. Although despite its really good effort in looking like an old school FPS, the sound design in this game is really good and doesn't really sound like something you would hear from that era, but it doesn't matter because they sound amazing. Especially the double-barreled shotgun, it feels so good to shoot. My only real hang-up with the game is the fact that it runs into that where in the world do I go syndrome that a lot of old school FPSs have. And there are some enemies that really irk me, but other than that, the game's really solid. Give it a try. I'm not really sure what I was expecting out of a medieval. I'm not the biggest fan of Heretic or Hexen, especially Hexen, that game sucks. But I am more than glad to say that my suspicions of a medieval's quality were completely false. This game is phenomenal. And you know, the crazy thing is, the game's arsenal isn't even that much different from something like Doom's. But what really sets it apart is the game's soul mode, which allows you to, upon collecting enough souls, to go utterly berserk with any weapon. They all become lethal. My personal favorite weapon to use in soul mode is the Voltride, which already by default has enemies emit a shockwave when they die, so it shocks other enemies. But in soul mode, it deals so much damage and you have a high chance of causing a big string to happen of all these enemies dying one after another. It is so satisfying. The game's soundtrack and aesthetic is just so good as well. And it's all pixel art. That is the crazy part about it. The animations, the aesthetic, the effects, the colors, man. This game is so beautiful. And with Andrew Holshot having a very relaxing soundtrack in the background, this is the only old school throwback FPS I can think of where I would consider it therapeutic. Almost the entire time while I was playing through the game, I felt so relaxed while playing it. And I think that alone makes a medieval worthy of being put on this list. Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story stands as one of my favorite RPGs ever made. While the standard combat is decent, the special abilities you get, along with getting an unofficial third-party member, that is Bowser, is just plain enjoyable. You'd think that with Bowser not having a parallel to him like Mario has with Luigi, that Bowser wouldn't be as fun to use, but surprisingly that isn't the case. Bowser is his own unit, generally dealing more damage and being able to burn enemies alive and hit them all at once, so there's pretty good compensation. And if you feel that you have trouble handling a certain enemy with Bowser, sometimes you might even be able to suck them in and have Mario and Luigi fight them. That's kind of where the whole weird partnership thing comes in, where you can only access other party members if you do a certain action. It's weird, but it's cool. Also, the soundtrack is amazing and the game is just downright funny. You gotta play it. I wish I could show more of this game, but well, yeah, we're not gonna get anywhere with this. A lot of people have said that GoldenEye 007 Remake is not worth your time, and if you don't like Call of Duty's loop, I would definitely say so because it has a lot of similarities to the Call of Duty franchise. It's made by Activision. But I don't know, man. This is a game I played a lot as a kid, and even now when I went back to get footage for the game, I had a lot of fun playing it. I think what really helps it out is the fact that there's so many guns you can pick from, and the game is so liberal about what you can use where. This isn't like Call of Duty where you get stuck with like the same 3 guns throughout the entire level. GoldenEye 007 Remake can get you like, I swear, like 9 weapons in one level sometimes. It's really liberal about just giving you whatever you want, really. Game is also home to some of the best shotguns ever made in a first-person shooter. The pump actions, the semi-autos, it's all good. I know some people really don't care for this game, especially for those who are fans of the N64 original, but I think if you come into this game with an open mind and you just play it for what it is, you might really enjoy it. I'm gonna be straight up with you. The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks has some pretty large issues, and people are justified in not liking this game. But if you're like me and decide to put up with it and look deeper than that, this game is very rich in content and has a lot of love and care put into it. The dungeons are really enjoyable, but they don't last too long, which is good because even some of the best dungeons can just last way too long. Oracle ages. Excuse me. All the items get plenty of screen time. The bonus dungeons in this game are just amazing and have some really awesome puzzles in them. Side quests are a lot of fun to do. You usually get force gems that make it easy to traverse the overworld, which is really nice. And the game is just downright funny. This is one of the funniest games I've ever played, and it's the funniest Zelda game I've ever played. Really, my 2 biggest gripes with the game is the fact that the overworld travel is so slow. I mean, like, I stopped and looked at my phone while traversing the overworld slow. Like, that's not good. And the fact that 100% of the game is just so tedious. It's based on RNG where you have to wait day by day to get everything. That is not good. I'm glad they dropped that. That is a terrible gameplay implementation. Why should I follow a live market in a Zelda game? That doesn't even sound right. But still, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks stands as my personal favorite Zelda game ever made. Amazing writing, amazing gameplay, and just all around an amazing game. I never really intended to actually play Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands because it did not look interesting to me at all. But one day I went over for a visit to my uncle's place, and I got the chance to try out the game for the first time, and I actually really dug it. So I decided that when the game was going to come out, I was going to go ahead and buy it, and I do not regret doing that. Ghost Recon Wildlands is filled with a bunch of busy work that's surprisingly not that tedious. To the best of my knowledge, there's not a single camp in this game that recycles the exact same layout. Every enemy camp has its own level design, its own enemy placements, and everything you have to keep track of. The variety of counters in this game is really what keeps it feeling fresh. It makes hunting gun parts, supplies, and whatever else you're looking for more satisfying to do. I only wish that Uplay actually worked with this game because the multiplayer is so fun, but Uplay is so laggy and it drives me insane. Serious Sam 3 BFE is a little controversial because it's made some changes to the original Serious Sam formula that some people find very backwards, and I could see an argument for some of them. But for me personally, that did not stop me from enjoying the game for as much as I did. Every single gun in this game has a really punchy sound effect to it, which I love about it so much. And the simple things like using the cannon in Serious Sam 3, which before, it was cool, it was really fun to use, but in Serious Sam 3, the punchier sound effect along with the screen shaking a little bit just adds so much more weight to how it feels to use. On top of the fact that Crow Team added the simple addition of being able to sprint, which is amazing because I love the first two Serious Sam games, the first and second encounter, but walking those long distances can get kind of tiring, but Serious Sam 3 really helps cut down on that by being able to sprint, and you sprint pretty fast at that. The game's also really good if you like managing your guns during a gunfight, because with weapon reloading, there's a lot of gun juggling. Is Serious Sam 3 BFE better than the first two games? Debatable, but as it stands on its own, I have a blast playing it. Honestly, 2 minutes is not enough for how good Dark Souls is. People have said it a million times, the level design is amazing, it most certainly is. It is impressive just how well the world loops in on itself and how you can go from here to there. You have to play it for yourself. It's amazing. There's also so many ways you can approach the combat, there's so many weapons and attributes to go with those weapons that you can manipulate to create your own playstyle. And yeah, the game can be kind of difficult at times, especially for a first timer, but if you stick with it, develop a strategy, and work towards bettering yourself, I'm sure you'll appreciate this game as much as I do. Also, as of this video, I've got a Dark Souls video in the process, so I can't really say too much about it, so I'm gonna have to leave you guys at that, sorry. I'm sure some of you guys out there laughed the moment you saw the title of this game, but no, I'm dead serious. I really like Overwatch, especially in its current state. I guess what really draws me in is the variety this game has to offer. Now, granted, it is technically smaller than another game like Team Fortress 2, where you can manipulate the game so much with so many loadout combinations you can make. But still, Overwatch's more straightforward approach and variety of characters just makes it a lot of fun to play to me. With the recent role queuing, it especially makes it more fun because now people have to abide by a 2-2-2 rule, and that means you won't get those games anymore where you have two guys that pick Hanzo and Widowmaker even though there's already two DPS in the game already. Fellas, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen someone pick an excess amount of one type of hero and just stick with it and they won't move from it. That is so annoying. And Blizzard fixing that has made me very pleased. If this video had came out before that update, it might have been a little harder to put Overwatch on the list, but after the role queue update, I'm sorry guys, it's gotta go in here. I love it too much now. I have not beaten Xenoblade Chronicles or Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I have played a decent amount of both of them and I can say for sure that I enjoy them a lot. Really, both games have something I like more than the other, which is why I'm putting them both on the list at the same time. And I know there's been a big debate about whether or not Xenoblade Chronicles X is better, worse, or an equal to Xenoblade Chronicles 1, especially when it comes to the story aspect of both games. To be honest with you, Xenoblade Chronicle 1's story is better than X, to be completely honest. But you guys know me, story is really not that important to me in an RPG. I mean, it is because it's a part of the experience, but Xenoblade Chronicles X is just fun to play, and that's what I'm looking for, a fun experience, not a movie. And what makes both games so fun to play is the fact that both of them have a high emphasis on positioning and targeting weak spots of an enemy, and that is a lot of fun. On top of timing when you should use abilities, when you shouldn't, who you should heal, who you shouldn't, because all battles run in real time. If you guys have watched my Final Fantasy IV video and you saw the ATB I was talking about, it's similar to that. There's a timing to everything. Pick up both if you can afford them. They're solid games. Half-Life 1 is a game that has really stood the test of time. It looks dated, but it's such a fun game to play. Don't get me wrong, the Half-Life 2 series is amazing in its own right, but the gameplay, especially the shooting, is what really reels me in with Half-Life 1. So all these years later, here comes Crowbar Collective, which takes it upon themselves to remake Half-Life 1. And not just a better paint job with the Source engine, but actually make some changes to it that improve the overall quality of life of the original experience. And yeah, you know what? They did a pretty good job of it. I can't even knock it. Black Mesa does a really good job of making everything just feel so good to shoot, especially the shotgun. The shotgun is just phenomenal. On top of that, you don't have that sort of, not really so much an issue, but that weird quirk with the original Half-Life AI where you could tell that everybody was kind of moving on rails a little bit. And with this being on the Source engine, the AI isn't somewhat locked to a kind of grid or whatever. I'm not sure how it works, but you can tell that they have preset paths. But with Black Mesa, the combat feels more natural. And the Zen chapters are some of the most immersive levels I've ever played in a first-person shooter. It's amazing what they did with it. Because, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the original Zen chapters and the original Half-Life 1 were garbage. And yeah, it's kinda cheating again, putting a remake on this list, but I don't care. Black Mesa feels like something fresh, but familiar. For some people, this listing might actually be a little surprising because I actually criticized this game for its story a few years ago. But truthfully, that's just a portion of the game's story. The rest of it is pretty good. The game plays off of this idea of, what if it's an RPG where you can play through it and not kill a single person, and you just talked out problems? Which is actually a very neat mechanic, albeit technically unoriginal. The bullet hell gameplay keeps it interesting as well because without it you would just have a bunch of talking. But the bullet hell scenarios make it so that you could still be engaged with the game, just dodging attacks as you try to get to a solution. The game's story is generally fuzzy and lighthearted, and of course plays off of the let's all be nice kind of story, which is not my biggest cup of tea, mostly because it can be a little unrealistic. Again, I've got a whole video talking about my issues with that game's story. But yeah, it generally does pretty good up until the end, where it just slams into a brick wall and just destroys any quality of writing it had left. But if you haven't, play it. It's a good game. If you had told me just a few years ago that, hey, Rob, you know the original Doom? I ain't talking like Doom 2, I'm talking like Doom 1, the one that got the ultimate Doom. That game's getting a 5th episode. And I'm not talking like a fan-made one, like something that's made official. Man, there is no way I would have believed you. But lo and behold, here comes John Romero, who makes a 5th episode of Doom, known as Sigil. And before it was just a mod, but now it's actually getting added to the console parts of Doom. You really can't get more official than that. So yeah, Doom 1 got an episode 5 known as Sigil. And you know what? It's really good. I really can't say much about the gameplay itself because it's just Doom as you know it, but I will say this. It's a very, very difficult episode. I know episode 4 amongst Doom fans is a little infamous for being a little too hard. Man, forget anything that episode 4 threw at you. Sigil is hard. And I didn't follow Civvy 11's advice of playing on Hurt Me Plenty first. No, I'm not doing that. I'm a Doom player, dude. We play on Ultra Violence first. And let me tell you, I hit that F9 key a whole lot, but it was worth it. And seeing as I've gotten another expansion to my favorite classic Doom game, I could not be happier. If you're ever sitting at home bored out of your mind and you just need some instant gratification for the moment, Sayonara Wild Hearts should satisfy that need. I'll get to that in a second. The gameplay loop of Sayonara Wild Hearts is fairly simple. You're chasing someone, you're moving fairly fast, and you need quick reflexes to get around obstacles. And occasionally you get a new gimmick that you have to mess around with that's usually pretty fun actually. And it really doesn't sound that fun, but once you actually get into it and you're dodging and you're jumping from one place to another and you're beating up people, it's a lot of fun, it's crazy. Feels like some weird hybrid between JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. But really the biggest thing going against this game is the fact that it's so distracting. Like, look at how many colors are on the screen right now, and how fast everything is going on top of that. I'm fairly good about keeping a good head in fast games like this, but even still, it got me a couple times with how bright and colorful it can get. On top of that, when the game introduces something new, you usually aren't given much time to process it, you usually just have to go with it. And when you're just starting out in the game, it can be a little hard deciphering when you do and do not have control over the character. But other than that, if you can actually stomach the colors and everything, and actually get through with it, it's a really good time. Just wish the game had some DLC because it's an hour long, it's such a short game. The magic of Just Cause 3 is the fact that it has such a simple premise, but it just does it so good. Blow everything up. Just blow everything up. I don't care. Destroy it. Blow it up. And yeah, there's some shooting here and there, you can do some wingsuit gliding and whatnot, but you're doing it so you can blow something up. That's just really it. You're just there to blow it up. But not seriously though. Making things detonate in this game feels really fantastic. Seeing things blow up, structures fall down, cars explode, cars crashing into things, helicopters falling, crashing on other stuff. It's such a wild game, and the car chases in this are just so amazing. It has a magic in its own right, dodging enemy cars, bumping enemy cars off the road, jumping up a one car, grappling to another, stealing that car, driving it, having the civilian you just stole the car from get run over. The game is insane, and it does it really, really well. That's really all I've got to say about it. Wolfenstein: The New Order's vision doesn't really reflect much of its old-school counterpart, where you're playing an old-school shooter in this labyrinthine environment, which is good because those maze levels in Wolfenstein 3D are awful, but for as different as it is, Wolfenstein: The New Order is just really, really good. It proved that you can make a cover shooter without relying on just sitting behind cover so much, because the issue with a lot of cover shooters is the fact that you just spend so much time looking at a wall, and that is not fun. But with the New Order allowing you to take more punishment, that means that you can pop out and fight enemies more, which makes it more engaging. And on higher difficulties, you'll be scrambling for medkits and ammo, which is good because it encourages moving around and staying active on your feet, while still finding cover so that you don't get shot up too bad. The game's expansion, The Old Blood, is really just more of the same, but it does the job just as good. What keeps so many players going back to Left 4 Dead 2 is the fact that its randomness factor is very well designed. The AI director is always monitoring what the player is doing and how well they are doing at that very moment, whether or not they're getting their butts kicked, or they're running out of ammo, or they're doing way too good. The game is constantly trying to keep the player on their toes while making sure that they aren't punished too hard. And yet, such a simple game design philosophy carries the experience for such a long time. And I think the game would have done decent if it had went without this, because the shooting is really good, the enemies are fun to fight, but the fact that, well, maybe I'll run into 2 smokers, maybe I'll run into 3 tanks in this level, maybe I'll run into 1 tank, maybe I'll run into 1 witch, 2 witches. You keep guessing with this game, and it always keeps you on your toes, and it keeps the player engaged. And other than the fact that I think this game can go completely overboard sometimes with this AI directing, you know, nothing's perfect. There's a reason why I have over 400 hours in this game. I very much enjoy myself a tabletop RPG. So when For the King came by and decided to take it upon itself to make that physical experience digital, I was more than down for it. And you know what? It's a solid attempt. While you can play the game by yourself, it is much, much more enjoyable if you have 2 other people to play it with. Because chances are you're going to be making jokes, you're going to be laughing at all the unfortunate things that happen to each other. And you can also celebrate victories together because it feels great to overcome some heavy challenges in this game. And yeah, this game can get very, very challenging at times. In fact, I can't even play the game without cranking pretty much everything down to its easiest level. And it's not that I find the game in its natural habitat to be unplayable, but it's so ridiculously tactical for me that I really can't keep up with it, at least not right now. And I think that even in its easiest form, it can still be pretty tough sometimes. The game doesn't mess around, and it doesn't pull any punches. There's a good chance you're probably going to fail your first few quest attempts. But once you figure out everything comes together, you and your friends take out the final boss for the first time, man, it feels great. The worst thing about For the King is the fact that you really need to have long sessions to really get anything done. This game is time consuming. Other than that, you have a very good time ahead of you. Prey 2017 feels like some strange RPG child of Half-Life and The Legend of Zelda. And you know what? I'm more than down for a combination like that. I think what really helps sell Prey 2017 for me is the fact that the exploration factor is so good in this game. There are so many ways you can approach enemy encounters or traveling to another location. And it really helps get the mind going when you're thinking of something that you might be able to pull off. In some cases, you might even find secret areas that give you really good loot. And then you can take that loot that you found and upgrade weapons with it, upgrade yourself, give yourself special abilities. And the abilities aren't just bullets hurt more, you swing wrench harder. There's some really good stuff in there, like being able to lift heavier objects, being able to hack equipment, being able to repair equipment, being able to jump higher, etc. At a time where I was desperate for some more Zelda-like content, Prey 2017 was there for me, and I was more than glad to open my arms for it. So we only have one game left, and fellas, what can I say? The impact that Doom 2016 left on me is something that I simply could not ignore. I think what really added to my enjoyment of this game is the fact that this game acted as a revival for a series that was, let's be honest, on its deathbed. You can look at all the mods out there for Doom. Yeah, it's awesome, but as far as getting more Doom content officially, we were running dry for a pretty long time. I think it was 100% fair to assume at that time that Doom was not coming back. And when Doom finally made its announcement that it was going to make a return, I was first excited about it, but then I was really skeptical about it, because when they first revealed Doom 2016, it looked so ridiculously slow and it didn't really look that fun once I really took time to understand it and look past the hype. But then I started hearing things about the game, that it was phenomenal, it was really good, that it was the best game of 2016, and you know what? I still clutched to my stance that Doom 2016 probably wasn't as good as people were saying it was. Because to me, it just looked off, it just didn't seem right. And I pretty much sat on that for most of 2016, until Christmas came by and I decided to try the game for myself because I didn't want to knock it completely until I actually tried the game. Then I played it for a bit, thought it was alright so far. And then I started to notice that the guns in this game felt really good to shoot. And then I started mastering Doom Guy's movement. I was vaulting over stuff, jumping all over the place, double jumping all over the place, breaking legs, punching off heads, breaking backs, ripping out rib cages. And then it really started to pick up on me. Started to get a flow of the game. And before I knew it, I had fell in love with this game. All the old monsters felt like a breath of fresh air and they were catching up with the times, while still also playing based off of their original functions, except for the Hellenites from the original Doom 2. For some reason, they were changed to be completely melee focused, but that's okay because the Barons of Hell fill in for that, where they act like Hell Knights so they can use projectile attacks. And I don't know, man, the game just feels so manly. Ripping doors open, tearing monsters in half, not using a regular assault rifle, but a heavy assault rifle because it's Doom Guy and he has to use a heavy assault rifle because he's manly, so it had the hardcore attitude down pat. The game felt like it was angry and screaming all the time. The weapon upgrades are a lot of fun to use, but if you guys know me from back in Season 1, you'll know that the chain gun is my favorite gun in Doom. So I stick a little close to that rotating mod where I just walk around with my minigun spinning up so I can just shoot enemies the moment I see it. And the chain gun is still my favorite gun in Doom 2016. And that's the craziest thing about this game. It's able to add so many new things to the original formula, yet still feel like an entry in the series. Doom 2016 took the time to learn from other modern games, and it wasn't just going to settle for being more of the same. And you know what? I would have taken more of the same, honestly. I really would have. But Doom 2016 took that extra mile and decided that it didn't want to settle for simplicity. And you know what? I was pleasantly surprised, and it's not often that I'm playing a video game and right after I beat it, I say, I want to play it again. So I can say, without a doubt, that Doom 2016 is the best game I have played in the past decade. I know you're getting ready to click off the video because that's what anybody would do when things are starting to wrap up, but if you wouldn't mind, I would like to hold you just a little longer. There's been people, friends or family, that have made some very nice contributions to the RoberOnocle community. So those who have made some kind of impact, at least in my opinion, this is for you.